Math 1332, Chapter 3, Symbolic Logic, Section 1, Statements and Quantifiers, Video 7, Translating Words to Symbols. This video may be a little bit longer than some previous ones because I have 7 examples to go through, but all of them have merit, so here we go. For the remainder of this video, use the following simple statements to translate each compound statement into symbols. Simple statement P, alcoholism is considered a mental illness. Simple statement Q, alcoholism is considered a physical illness. Simple statement R, not enough people seek treatment for alcoholism. Now, I'm not saying that these statements are true or false. I'm just saying that they are simple statements. I did a quick Wikipedia search on alcoholism, and it is considered in the medical community as both a mental and physical illness. I do not know whether or not enough people seek treatment for alcoholism. But using these simple statements, let's translate the following compound statements into symbols. A, alcoholism is considered a mental illness and not enough people seek treatment. Let's start with finding the connective. It should jump out at you at this point because there's only 4 choices for connectives, and the one that we talked about first was the word and. What is the symbol for and? It looks like an A. Once you find the connective, look to the left, look to the right, and see what you see. On the left side, alcoholism is considered a mental illness. Which simple statement is that? P. On the right side, not enough people seek treatment. Which simple statement is that? It is statement R, even though statement R has the prepositional phrase for alcoholism at the end of it, because contextually in this compound statement, it's clear that it's talking about alcoholism. The symbolic translation for A is P conjunction R, or equivalently P and R. All right, B. Alcoholism is considered a physical illness, but not a mental illness. Where's the connective? It's not one that was listed before, so we need to talk about it. The connective in this statement is the word but. Now, we didn't have a symbol for the word but. However, from a logical perspective, the word but is kind of like one of the connectives we already had. So which one could we replace it with without losing the meaning of the sentence? Could we replace it with and? Alcoholism is considered a physical illness and not a mental illness. Actually, yes, we could. So from this point forward, if you ever see the word but as a connective, it's considered to be the same as and. Which sounds funny, but from a logical perspective, it is correct. So, being an and, we'll draw the conjunction, the one pointing up. Look to the left. Alcoholism is considered a physical illness, which is Q. Look to the right. Not a mental illness. Now, realize that that is not a statement because it's not a complete sentence, but this is where our connectives sometimes are between phrases and clauses instead of entire sentences. If we were to read that statement in its entirety, it would be alcoholism is considered a physical illness, but alcoholism is not considered a mental illness. So how would we write alcoholism is not considered a mental illness? Well, P is alcoholism is considered a mental illness, so it would be that, but this is its negation, so it would be Q and negation P, or Q conjunction negation P. All right, let's take a look at the next ones. Oh, and by the way, I should have said this at the beginning. I invite you to pause anytime I put up new statements like this and see if you can translate all of them into symbols. They do get a little bit more challenging as we move forward. Got the simple statements listed at the top. Let's go to C. If alcoholism is not considered a physical illness, then not enough people will seek treatment. Where's the connective? This is the split connective. It's the phrase if then. And the symbol for the conditional, an arrow pointing to the right. On the left side of the arrow is the simple statement following the word if. So let's go ahead and translate that. How would we translate alcoholism is not considered a physical illness into symbols? Well, it's almost Q, except it's negation. It's the negation of Q. It's negation. I don't like saying it's twice in a row, but oh well. So negation Q pointing to what? Well, look on the right side. Excuse me, look at the simple statement after the word then. Not enough people will seek treatment. That is precisely statement R. Well, again, it's missing the prepositional phrase for alcoholism, but that's implied by the context of the compound statement. So how are you finding this so far? Pretty straightforward, pretty easy? Hold tight. It'll get a little more challenging, not a whole lot more. All right, D, enough people would seek treatment for alcoholism if and only if it is considered a mental illness. I don't know if I just left out the I in front of the S for the word is, or if I forgot the apostrophe, we'll just put an apostrophe there to make it a contraction. All right, enough people will seek treatment for alcoholism if and only if it's considered a mental illness. The connective, it's hard to miss this one, if and only if. That's the biconditional, it's the two-headed arrow. And let's look on both sides of it. Enough people will seek treatment for alcoholism. Which simple statement is that? If you said R, you're kind of right, but not exactly. R says not enough people seek treatment. This statement says enough people seek treatment. It's the negation of R. And on the right side of the if and only if, it's considered a mental illness. Alcoholism is considered a mental illness. That is statement P. I hope you found them pretty straightforward so far, because it's just been an issue of identifying the connective, looking on both sides of it, and putting in a negation whenever the simple statement is the negation of one of the given simple statements. But we're about to ramp it up a little. E, it is not the case that alcoholism is treated as both a physical and mental illness. Where's the connective? It's here, it's and, which means we're going to have a conjunction. But there's something else about this statement that may be unclear on how to translate. It's the very beginning. It is not the case that. Now, this phrase doesn't occur very often, but when it does, it's usually followed by a compound statement. In other words, just look right after that. It is not the case that alcoholism is treated as both a mental and physical illness. So it's, look inside the parentheses. Alcoholism is treated as both a physical and mental illness. That would be easy to translate if you unpackage the entire half, both halves of the entire statement, which would be alcoholism is treated as a physical illness and alcoholism is treated as a mental illness. So the part inside of the parentheses is simply Q and P. Now, if you said P and Q, it would actually be okay. A conjunction is switchable. My name is Chris and I teach math. I teach math and my name is Chris. And is switchable. Or is switchable. If and only if it's switchable. The only one that's not switchable is a conditional, but we'll talk about that later. But if we ignored the phrase in front, and I'm just going to cover it up for a second, then alcoholism is treated as both a physical and mental illness would just be Q conjunction P. But it's not the case of that. So it's the negation of that, but it's the negation of the whole thing. Oops, forgot to put it back to drawing. If you see the phrase, it is not the case that, it will translate to a negation sign. And chances are the thing that follows that phrase will be a compound statement in its own right. So it's the negation of the entire compound statement, which you would put in parentheses. It is not the case that alcoholism is treated as a physical illness and as a mental illness. So that one's a little bit sneaky because we haven't talked about the phrase, it is not the case that. But again, the phrase, it is not the case that usually means a negation of a compound statement. That compound statement goes inside of parentheses. Told you it was going to get trickier. Two more. Same simple statements up top. F, if alcoholism is considered a physical or mental illness, then enough people will seek treatment. Where is the connective? And it's sort of a trick question, because to ask you where is the connective is misleading, because that implies that there's only one when there's not, because there's actually two connectives. One of them, of course, is the if-then, but did you catch the other one? It's very stealthy, snuck in there real quick. The other one, or. This is the first one we have that has two different connectives. It's got an if-then, the conditional, the arrow pointing to the right, and it's got the or, the disjunction, the arrowhead pointing down. So which one do we start with? Sometimes there's a clue, and in this case, there is. It's the comma. If you see a comma, then the primary, and there's more than one connective, let me stress that. If you see a comma and there's more than one connective, the one immediately following the comma is usually the primary connective, and that's where we would start with. In this case, the connective after the comma is the then, which is part of the if-then package, which is this arrow. And we go from there. On the left side of the arrow, we write the statement between if and then, and more specifically following the word if. And the phrase following the word if is all this. Because all of that is on the left side of a connective, and all of that is another compound statement in its own right, it's going to go in parentheses. Let me say that again. If you have a compound statement inside another compound statement, the first one goes in parentheses. The circled compound statement, alcoholism is considered a physical or mental illness, is inside the if-then statement, which means it will go in parentheses. Now let's translate that statement. Alcoholism is considered a physical or mental illness, which is the same as alcoholism is considered a physical illness, statement Q, or alcoholism is considered a mental illness, statement P. And all of that is the first part of the if-then. I'm trying real hard to not call it the antecedent, but in a future video, we'll learn that the left part of an if-then is called an antecedent, A-N-T-E-C-E-D-E-N-T, the prefix ante meaning before, and the part that follows is called the consequent. I'm kind of giving you a preview of this, but the parts of an if-then have names, the antecedent and the consequent. I'm trying not to call them that, but I just want to let you know in case I do. All right, so now that we figured out the left side of the if-then, we just have to look to the right to figure out what this is. Enough people will seek treatment. That's almost statement Q, statement R, except it's its negation. I'm having trouble drawing tildes. That's an R, not a P. So this one involved all three. Guess what? So does the last one. Not enough people will seek treatment if alcoholism is not considered a physical or mental illness. Where's the connective? Well, there's two of them. One of them is the or, but do you see the other? And if you're going, well, sort of, because I see an if, but I don't see its then, this is where you have to be flexible with the way that you phrase sentences. This is not phrased in the form if then, but it could be rephrased in the form if then. How? If, you know what? We have copy and paste for a reason. If all this, and we're starting the sentence, so we'll capitalize it, then this. So these two statements are equivalent. Not enough people will seek treatment if alcoholism is not considered a physical or mental illness. That's the same as saying, if alcoholism is not considered a physical or mental illness, then not enough people will seek treatment. And sometimes even when it's in that order, the word then is implied. If alcoholism is not considered a physical or mental illness, not enough people will seek treatment. For our purposes, it's nice when both the if and the then are there. But there's two things to glean from this example so far. Number one, sometimes the word then is implied but not explicitly stated. And number two, sometimes the antecedent and the consequence are in the reverse order. The important thing is what follows the if and what follows the then, even if the then isn't written there. So we're going to translate the second one, but I really wanted to emphasize that if-then statements come in multiple varieties, as we'll see in future videos. All right, so let's go back to it. Oops, did not what I want to do. There we go. Okay, so let's translate the second one. It's an if-then statement. There's a comma. There's an or. There's also a not, so we got to worry about that. Because of the comma and because of the multiple compound, let's try that again. Because of the multiple connectives, the or and the if-then. One of them takes precedence over the other. One of them is the primary connective. There should be a comma. The primary connective follows it. There's a comma. What follows it is the word then once we put it in there. This is just like the previous one. It's going to be an arrow. Let's go ahead and take care of the second part. Not enough people will seek treatment. That's easy. That is exactly statement R. Nothing to worry about there. But the one on the left, which I'm going to circle in blue, I don't know why, is a little trickier. If alcoholism is not considered a physical or mental illness, is this the same as back here when we had the parentheses? The answer is no, because it does not say it is not the case that. So we're not going to have negation in front of parentheses. We need to think about how to state this so that both halves of the or are whole sentences. Right now, on the left of the or is alcoholism is not considered a physical illness. And on the right side, on the left, it just says alcoholism is not considered a physical. And on the right, it just says mental illness. But if we were to unpackage both simple statements in their entirety, it would be alcoholism is not considered a mental illness, or alcoholism is not considered, I said it backwards, alcoholism is not considered a mental illness. Okay. Let me pause for a second. Not literally. I'm debating between writing this. Nope. And writing this. It's worth noting that if you noticed, I paused before I wrote the disjunction. I even wrote it incorrectly before. It is very easy to draw the incorrect symbol for and versus or if you're not careful. Doesn't matter how good you think you are. So which one is it? Is it that one with the parentheses, or does it have no parentheses with a negation on both? Not considered a physical or mental illness. It is not this. What's bouncing in my head, and you can see that sometimes even after the best of us will struggle, is the statement the same as alcoholism is not considered a physical illness, or alcoholism is not considered a mental illness? And I may have painted ourselves in a corner here because we're not ready to address whether or not that's the same as what we see here. So I know. This is what I was thinking when I set up this video. Just to let you know, it takes a lot more time to set up the videos than it does for me to actually record them. So you're welcome. Let me undo some of this. If you're not sure how to write a negation like this one, there's a trick to it. The trick is, how would you write it if the word not wasn't there? So just for a moment, we're going to cover up the word not. Alcoholism is considered a physical or mental illness. That part's easy. Parentheses, because we had multiple connectives and we already figured out that the arrow was the primary one. And so the other connecta goes in parentheses. Alcoholism is considered a physical or mental illness would be this. Physical is first, yes, P or Q. So that's what it would look like without the word not. I need the negation of that thing. And what's the negation of that thing? This. Some of these are tricky. Most of them are easy. It's the compound negation ones that get a little bit tricky. So if you were good up into there, you're going to be fine. But just remember that simple statements are single letters. And is this, or is that. Conjunction, disjunction. By the way, disjunction points down. That's alliteration. Conditional is the arrow. Biconditional is the double-headed arrow. And negations can be easy when they only apply to a single statement, but a little trickier when they apply to a compound statement. So, wait, is this the same as that one? No, it's not. So, yeah. Now, don't worry. If you want more practice, we're going to be translating lots of words into symbols for the rest of this chapter.